Here the evolution takes place in a material universe. Okay. So what, what Srivendra said in the previous para.
Excuse me. We have not completed the first para, an evolutionary process. You are skipping one paragraph.
I see.
No, we
An
have done this.
evolutionary process must be.
Okay. I'll read it. Okay. No, you have to read it. Yasmin, you read the para. An evolutionary process.
Yeah, I can read.
Yeah, go ahead.
An evolutionary process must be, by the very terms of the problem to be solved, a development in some first established basic principle of being or substance of something that basic principle holds involved in itself or else admits from outside itself and modifies by the admission, for it must necessarily modify by its own law of nature all that enters into it and is not already part of its own nature. This must be so even if it is a creative evolution in the sense of manifesting always new powers of existence that are not native to the first foundation but introduced into it, accepted into an original substance. If, on the contrary, there is already there in involution present in the first foundation, but not yet manifested or not yet organized, the new principle or power of existence that has to be evolved then. When it appears, it will still have to accept modification by the nature and law of the basic substance. But also, it will modify that substance by its own power, its own law of nature, if, further, it is aided by a descent of its own principle already established in its own full force above the field of evolution and pressing down into that field to possess it. Then the new power may even establish itself as a dominant element and considerably or radically change the consciousness and action of the world in which it emerges or into which it enters. But its force to modify or change or to revolutionize the law and working of the original substance chosen as the evolutionary matrix will depend upon its own essential potency. It is not likely that it will be able to bring about an entire transformation if it is not itself the original principle of existence, if it is only derivative and instrumental power and not the first puissance.
In this paragraph, Surendra is discussing a general principle. Okay. He is telling you something very interesting. So what I'll do, I'll read the summary of what he has said slowly, and you grasp the basic idea. Okay. So then we will read this para very carefully. Okay. But what he is saying here is in general terms. What is evolution and what is its nature? That's what he is discussing. And he is discussing theoretically. Okay. He is not talking of the evolution in the actual evolution in the physical world. No. He is talking of general and its characteristics. Okay. So I'm reading out the summary of what he has said now. Listen carefully. Okay. What exactly is evolution and how does it work? It's a theoretical question. Okay. An original substance evolves in possible ways. So you take any one thing, okay, and it evolves in many possible ways. Okay. That is what is evolution. You take an original substance, whatever that substance be, and it goes on changing its characteristic. How does it change its characteristic? By what is already involved in it or what is coming into it from outside. Okay. Like for instance, the seed is a substance and it evolves into a tree because the tree is already involved in it. This is the first type of evolution. The second type of evolution is something like, okay, the you can take the example of the pan, okay, the pan that you chew in India, okay. So suppose there is a pan, it's a substance, but there is nothing in it inherent in it, okay. So it cannot evolve. So you have to put something from outside into it. So you take chunam and put it into the pan, then it evolves a red color. Okay. So I'm just discussing these two things, two ways of evolution. One is that a substance evolves by itself because of the inherent potentialities within that substance itself. Like, for instance, the seed. The seed develops because the tree is already involved in it. Okay, number one. The other one is the pan, which is absolutely no capacity of itself to develop. There's nothing inherent in it. So something has to come from it outside and modifies the original substance. Okay. So first, powers other than the original substance are already involved in it, and when given the right conditions, they emerge one by one. This is the first one. Take the seed. The seed is a substance, but already the fruits and flowers and leaves and roots are all involved in the tree. It is there in this. So, if you give it the right conditions, it will flower. And what are the right conditions? Water, sunlight, and all. Then it will evolve into a tree. Okay. So, this is the first one. The hidden superior power emerges and changes the original substance. So the seed has now become different substance. It has become leaf substance, fruit substance, branch substance, and root substance. It has changed. The substance has changed. This is the first one. But it also gets influenced and limited by the lesser original substance. In other words, the root has already got part of the seed in it, and the flower also has got part of the seed in it. Okay, that's the substance. This is the first one. Okay? But in this case, the power to transform the lower is not complete because they. I'm reading out the summary. We'll see very clearly. The power to transform the lower is not complete if the higher is not the highest. Okay, so that's the first one. The second way evolution could effectuate itself is if the original substance has no other power inherent in it, just like the pan, as I told you. But an outside power enters into it and changes it. Here too, the second substance will alter the original, but the extent to which change occurs depends upon the intensity and quality of the second substance. And if it is not the highest creative power, then its transformative power is limited and it gets itself affected by the lower primary substance. Okay, so this is what he's saying. Then there is a little more. Thus, when life enters into matter, now he is talking about the evolution at our level only. Now the theoretical part is over. Okay. Thus, when life enters into matter, dead matter becomes living matter. Matter has changed. Okay. It has become living matter. But life itself gets limited by the power of death. Matter is dead, and that influences the life also. Life influences matter, and matter also influences life. That's what he's saying. Both get affected. Similarly, when mind enters into living matter, its own infinite mental power of knowledge gets restricted by the gravitational pull of the lower and becomes ignorance rather than knowledge. So, if this is so, then the powers of life and mind are not the highest creative force. So there must be an even higher, more potent force above life and mind that has yet to manifest in man. And its appearance here must necessarily be inevitable in the future. What he's saying is, which is the second substance entering the first one? The first one is the inconscient, we know. Okay? Now, if life enters into it, life is not powerful enough to change it, it changes it only to a certain extent. Similarly, when mind enters into matter, or rather life matter, then it also doesn't have the power to change it completely. It changes it to a certain extent, but not completely. Now, supermind, if it comes in, supermind is such a substance, its original creative power, it itself does not get transformed, but it transforms the matter. That's what Shendra is saying. Okay? So, with this background, now we'll read the paragraph that we read just now. An evolutionary, I'm reading each sentence of the para that we just now read. Okay? An evolutionary process must be, by the very terms of the problem to be solved, a development in some first established basic principle of being or substance. Take any substance, okay, and it has to develop. So it will develop in two ways: something which is already involved in it, or something which comes from outside. You can also think of it in a very, there are so many examples that one can give oneself. Take mud, okay, take clay, okay, and let us suppose that it doesn't have any power to change itself into anything. But now you take the skill of the potter and introduce it into matter, then it evolves into a pot. Okay, so that's the second method. The first method is that the clay itself has got the power to evolve what is already involved in it. And the second is there is no power involved in the substance, and it has to, another substance has to come into it. These are the two ways evolution takes place. Okay, so I'm reading the sentence carefully again. You see, it's a long sentence, that's all. An evolutionary process must, by the very terms of the problem to be solved, a development. It has to be a development in some first established basic principle. First established basic principle, we thought of clay. Okay, you can also think of the inconscient. So it says it is there. Basic principle of being of substance, of something that basic principle holds involved in itself, or else admits from outside itself and modifies by the admission. Two ways, okay? Or it must necessarily modify by its own law of nature all that enters into it, and it is not already part of its own. Once again, for it must necessarily modify by its own law of nature all that enters into it, and is not already part of its own nature. Anything that enters into it, it changes it. This must be so, even if it be, or sorry, this must be so, even if it is a creative evolution in the sense of manifesting always new powers of existence that are not native to the first foundation, but introduced into it, accepted into an original substance. Okay, so it depends on what is coming from outside. That's all. In our case, first life is coming into it, then secondly, mind is coming into it and changing it. Now, this change will be partial only if the substance coming from outside into it is not the highest. If it is the highest, it will change it fundamentally. That's what Shendra is saying. If, on the contrary, there is already there in evolution, present in the first foundation, but not yet manifested or not yet organized, the new principle or power of existence that has to be evolved, then when it appears, it will still have to accept modification by the nature and law of the basic substance. So this is what our evolution is. Already in matter or in the inconscient, there is the involved in it, life is involved, mind is involved, and supermind is involved. So they have to evolve, and they are evolving and manifesting slowly. That's what Shanti said. If further it is aided by the descent of its own principle, already established in its own full force above the field of evolution, and pressing down into that field to possess it, then the new power may even establish itself as a dominant element and considerably or radically change the consciousness and action of the world in which it emerges or into which it enters. But its force to modify or change or to revolutionize the law and working of the original substance chosen as the evolutionary matrix will depend upon its own essential potency. It is not likely that it will be able to bring about an entire transformation if it is not itself the original principle of existence. If it is only derivative and instrumental power and not the first process. It's a very philosophical discussion, a very theoretical discussion, but I'll put it very simply to you. Let's talk about our own evolution, which becomes very clear. Matter is the original substance from which evolution is taking place in our world. Okay? Very, very clear. And in matter, there is already involved the higher principles, and they are coming out one by one. Life is coming out, mind is coming out, and supermind is coming out because it's already there inside matter. But if it is life is there coming from outside and entering into matter, it helps. It does help to make it come up quicker. That's what I'm saying. But if life is not the ultimate substance, then the matter will get changed a little bit and life also will get changed a little bit. Both will affect each other. It's like if you put in a glass of water, one drop of red, okay, the red will become less affected by the water and the water also will become more red by its being affected. Both affect each other. That's what he's saying. And if mind also comes in, then that also will happen. Mind also will get altered and matter also will get altered. But if the incoming force is absolutely the last element, then the evolution can complete itself. That's what basically he's saying. Okay? So it's a very theoretical discussion, but this is what he's saying. So if supermind is the final, then it will completely modify matter and it will transform itself fundamentally. That's what exactly he's saying. Okay? So now we can read the next one. Now Srendra has discussed theoretically. Now he is saying here the evolution takes place. That means to say the evolution in the physical world. Now yes, tell me. Tell me.
It is the last sentence. It is if it is only derivative and instrumental power and not the first position. Can you explain it a little more, Dada? It is not likely that it will be.
Take life coming. Listen, just as life is coming into matter, life is only a derivative power, a secondary power. It's not the full power. Mind also is coming into matter and it's also a secondary power. Okay? So then the transformation cannot be complete. It will be half, just like in the one. But if it is the original substance, like the supermind, it will change it fundamentally. That's what Srendra is saying. Derivative means it is not the original. Okay? It's only instrumental. All right?
Okay, Dada. Yes, Dada. Now I understood the first paragraph of the mother book of Sri Aurobindo, that the original power that will that will answer from the above. And that time, I think regarding this, Sri Aurobindo has explained there in the mother book, the small book, the mother.
Sima, This is a
Yes, sir.
class. There are many others also. So you don't need to tell your own experience, okay, or your own understanding. We will have to concentrate on the class.
Sorry.
They may not, they are interested only in knowing this life divine.
Okay.
They may not be interested in
Okay.
what you have experienced, okay, or understood.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dada.
Yes,
Thank you,
please.
Dada, for guidance.
Remember that. Ask the questions and everybody will benefit. But don't go off into sidelines, okay? Because that will, they may not be interested in it, okay?
Sorry.
There's so
Dada.
many
Sorry.
others
Sorry.
also.
Excuse- Sorry.
Now we read the next one. Here the evolution takes place in a material universe. So Jasmine read it. Now one of you has to read it. So
Should I read?
Yes. Okay. Yes. Sumki, you can read.
Yes. Mhm.
Go ahead.
Here, the evolution takes place in a material universe. The foundation, the original substance, the first established all conditioning status of things is matter. Mind and life are evolved in matter, but they are limited and modified in their action by the obligation to use its substance for their instrumentation, and by their subjection to the law of material nature, even while they modify what they undergo and use. For they do transform its substance, first into living substance and then into conscious substance. They succeed in changing its inertia, immobility, and inconscience into a movement of consciousness, feeling, and life. But they do not succeed in transforming it altogether. They cannot make it altogether alive or altogether conscious. Life nature evolving is bound to death. Mind evolving is materialized as well as vitalized. It finds itself rooted in inconscience, limited by ignorance. It is moved by uncontrolled life forces which drive and use it. It is mechanized by the physical forces on which it has to depend for its own self-expression. This is a sign that neither mind nor life is the original creative power. They, like matter, are intermediaries, successive and seried instruments of the evolutionary process. If a material energy is not that original power, then we must seek for it in something above mind or life. There must be a deeper occult reality which has yet to disclose itself in nature.
Okay. Now he is speaking very clearly about our evolution of from the inconscient. Okay? So it's very clear what he's saying, but I will go step by step and we'll finish the paragraph. So, one second. Yeah. Yeah. Here means on earth. Okay. Very clearly, he's talking of the evolution in the physical world. The evolution takes place in a material universe. We have a material universe. Matter is the main starting point. The foundation, the original substance, the first established all conditioning status of things is matter. Anything that enters into it, matter is going to change it. Okay, matter is going to influence it. Anyone who comes into, okay, it's like if I am fully Indian, okay, and I go into America, can I maintain my full Indianness? It is doubtful. It will be a little bit Americanized, okay. But also the American way of living also may be influenced by me. Okay, there's a mutual influence. That's what Sandra is saying here. So life, which is absolute living, okay, comes into matter. Matter which is dead can become living. So we have living creature. But life which is absolute living, does it really become like that, or is matter also influencing it? It becomes subject to death. In other words, life energy is also altered and matter also is altered. Okay? That's exactly what he's saying. Here the evolution takes place in a material universe. The foundation, the original substance is matter. Mind and life are evolved in matter. Mind and life are evolved in matter. But they are limited and modified in their action by the obligation to use the substance for the instrumentation and by their subjection to the law of material nature, even while they modify what they undergo and use. So, when life is coming into matter, life also is affected and matter also is affected. Matter is affected upwards and life is affected downwards. Similarly, mind also. Mind is absolute knowledge. But when mind absolute knowledge comes into matter, it loses its absolute knowledge and ends up in ignorance. And matter, which is absolutely ignorant, starts getting a little bit of knowledge. Okay, that's the brain. This is what Sandra is saying. But if life and matter are not the ultimate principle, they will alter matter only to a certain extent. But if there is an original principle, creative principle, which is the last, and that comes into matter, then the transformation will be not half, but full. That's what Sandra is saying. Okay. For they do transform its substance first into living substance. Okay? When life comes in, you get living substance. Then into conscious substance. That's mind. They succeed in changing its inertia. Inertia, the nature of matter is inertia. It changes the inertia. Okay? When life comes in, you don't have inertia absolutely. Part of matter remains inertia, but part of matter also becomes movement. Okay, it becomes living creature. That's what Sandra is saying. And when mind also comes in, then that also becomes half affected by matter, and matter also affects the mind. Mind is absolute knowledge. But when it comes into matter, then matter affects it and it is itself also affected. It ends up in ignorance. That's what Sandra is saying. But they do not succeed in transforming it altogether. They both get affected. This gets affected and that gets affected. It's like if I have a glass of pink color, okay, and I introduce blue into it, I put blue water into it, will the glass become absolutely blue? It won't. The blue water also will become a little pinkish and the pinkish water also will become blue. But if the blue has a power, the absolute power, even if I pour it into anything, even if I pour it into pink water or yellow water, it will become blue. That's what Sandra is saying. So when the supermind enters into matter, it will produce supramental substance. That is what Sandra is saying. Okay. I've given many examples to explain what he's saying. It should be clear now. But when life and mind are coming in, they do not succeed in transforming it altogether. They transform it to a certain extent, but not altogether. He's talking of life and mind. Okay? They cannot make it altogether alive or altogether conscious. Life nature evolving is bound to death. Mind evolving is materialized as well as vitalized. It finds itself rooted in inconscience, limited by ignorance. It is moved by uncontrolled life forces which drive and use it. It is mechanized by the physical forces on which it has to depend for its own self-expression. This is a sign that neither mind nor life is original creative power. Because as I said, if the original creative power, let's take blue, okay? If blue is absolutely the supreme power, it can go into anything, but it will make that blue, but won't get affected itself. That's what Sandra is saying. So this is a sign that neither mind nor life is the original creative power. They, like matter, are intermediaries, successive and serial instruments of an evolutionary process. If the material energy is not that original power, then we must seek for it in something above mind or life. There must be a deeper occult reality which has yet to disclose itself in nature. That substance is the supermind. That's what Sendai said. So we have 6 minutes more. Maybe we can read one more para. It's quite big, but we'll be able to read it. We'll do it next time. Okay. So who will read? Kiran, you have the text with you?
Yes, Rangada.
Okay. Can you
Shall I
read
read?
it?
Yes.
An original, creative, or evolutionary power.
An original creative or evolutionary power there must be, but although matter is the first substance, the original and ultimate power is not an inconscient material energy, for then life and consciousness would be absent. Since inconscience cannot evolve consciousness, nor an inanimate force evolve life. There must be, therefore, since mind and life also are not that, a secret consciousness greater than life consciousness or mind consciousness, an energy more essential than the material energy. Since it is greater than mind, it must be a supramental consciousness force. Since it is a power of essential substance other than matter, it must be the power of that which is the supreme essence and substance of all things, a power of the spirit. There is a creative energy of mind and a creative life force, but they are instrumental and partial, not original and decisive. Mind and life do indeed modify the material substance they inhabit and its energies, and are not merely determined by them, but the extent and way of this mutual modification and determination are fixed by the inhabitant and all containing spirit through a secret indwelling light and force of supermind, and occult gnosis, an invisible self knowledge and all knowledge. If there is to be an entire transformation, it can only be by the full emergence of the law of the spirit. Its power of supermind or gnosis must have entered into matter, and it must evolve in matter. It must change the mental into supramental being, make the inconscient in us conscious, spiritualize our material substance, erect its law of Gnostic consciousness in our whole evolutionary being and nature. This must be the culminating emergence, or at least that stage in the emergence which first decisively changes the nature of the evolution by transforming its action of ignorance and its basis of inconscience.
Quite a big para, and we still have 3 minutes. So I'll read out the summary of what he's saying, and we can do it next time, more detailed manner. So what he's saying in the para is like this. Evolution starts from matter. It is the original substance that transforms itself in small steps, little by little. But matter is not totally unconscious substance, because if it were so, life and mind could not have evolved out of it. But since neither life nor mind could transform matter completely, it continues to remain apparently unconscious. Therefore, there must be another ultimate original creative power that could transform matter completely by introducing immortality and consciousness. That power must be above mind. We call it supermind or gnosis. If that power descends from above and enters matter, then death would be abolished and ignorance would be destroyed. Matter would be spiritualized and immortality and knowledge would be openly manifested. Spirit manifested in matter, that would be the culmination of the evolution. This is what Sendai is saying. So, I don't know if it is clear, but what Sendai is saying is that when substance 1, that is inconscient, gets entered into by substance 2, Okay. If both are being affected, then the substance too is not all powerful. There must be the substance which is coming into matter must be so powerful that it completely changes it. Whereas what's happening? Life is entering into matter and becoming subject to death. So life is not remaining its pure element. Then mind, which is pure knowledge, okay, when it enters into matter, it is becoming ignorance. It is being affected by matter. So there must be something which is matter will not be able to affect the incoming thing, and that is supermind. That is what Chandra is saying. And that supermind, when it comes, it will change matter completely. It will become full of life and also full of immortality and knowledge. That's what Chandra is. Okay, and that principle is supermind. Okay, so we stop here today, and tomorrow we can discuss this more in detail. I'll make a note. I've done it quite thoroughly, but maybe it is not very clear, but we can discuss it clearly tomorrow. An original, creative, or revolutionary power. Page 733. I'll make a note of it. You can also make a note. Okay. Au revoir, everybody. Have a nice day. See you tomorrow.
Thank you, Rangadhar.
Thank you, Ankita.